Yo, Rick, stop playing with me, man. Stop playing with me. You keep doing that shit, man. Stop. Not funny anymore.
The love of friends.
Hey,
Lifelong friends.
when you're on air, you're on air. All right.
And cut. Scene.
And scene. All right, all you fucktards. This is what I like to call the Bloody Nerd Podcast. And lucky for you guys, I am the Bloody Nerd, and here with some of my other nerd friends. And we're going to talk about some recent things in the nerd sphere. Excuse me. And just kind of somewhat casual conversation with some information. Hopefully, will make some of you sweaties out there a little bit more in the know. 'Cause I think this is a perfect situation. This is exactly what I'm wanting to do. This is a podcast for the sweaties to stay a little more logical and less emotional. That's what this podcast is all about. At least for this episode. So, that being said, I'm going to introduce a couple of my friends to the immediate right of me, I guess, depending on how you look. I guess it's my right. It's probably going to be everyone else's left. This is mirrored. But we got Graven Raven Wolf here, or the Graven One, as he likes to call himself.
What's up, guys?
Mr. Master of the Grave. The graviness.
The carrier of Raven thoughts.
The carrier of the gravy. And then, of course, we have Mr. Sean Anthony himself.
Yes, sir. Here and present.
Rocking a Detroit hat over there. You know what I'm saying? Even though he's from Brooklyn, but, he loves Detroit. So, hey.
I wear the Detroit hat to piss off my Yankee fans everywhere.
That's exactly what it is. That makes sense. All right.
The plot thickens.
The plot thickens.
Mets. Yeah. Blue and orange runs in my blood. I'm a Mets fan, but,
Yes, exactly.
Got to be an instigator, too.
Yeah, well, that's why you got the Detroit hat on. All right, so today we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to get into, a couple of quick little topics, and then at the end here have a little kind of free-for-all conversation. This is all very free-for-all. I mean, basically one of the reasons why this is happening is because 99.9% of the time, when either of us get together, if it's the three of us, or if it's just one or two of us together, obviously, even if it's just by myself when I talk to myself, it tends to be very interesting conversation. It tends to go on for an hour at least. And it's just one of those things where at the end of it all, it's always like, why weren't we recording this? There's definitely people out there that I'm sure would love to listen to this. So this day and age, it seems like everybody's recording everything anyway, so we might as well just go ahead and give it a go. So that's what we're going to do.
Some of those conversations we might get in trouble for, though. I'm just telling you that right now.
Yeah,
it's very controversial stuff.
The more trouble you get into nowadays, the more money you make. That's pretty much the way that works. So I'm fine with getting in trouble. Let's get in some trouble then. If that's
good trouble,
we can all deserve a lot of trouble right now. So first things first, with everything that's been going on right now, like everybody is, I guess the main purveyor of the nerd sphere happens to be Disney. They have everything from Marvel to Lucasfilm. So it seems to be like if it's nerd based, it has to be Disney related right now, which is unfortunate. And I don't think I ever would have saw that being the case ever in my life. But that just happens to be the way it is right now. So with that being said, the last big to-do that happened with the Disney situation was the whole Lucasfilm firing Gina Carano. So everybody in Nerdville has their, some people are for it, some people are against it. If you listen to nerd media right now, you would think that most of the nerd populace is against her being fired. I don't truly believe that. It's the way I see it, and I've had this conversation with Sean, is unfortunately right now the nerd media is being run by the best way to say it would be the right-wing nerds. And what did I call it, Sean? The right-wing nerd surge? Right-wing nerd surge.
You said something about the right-wing...
The right-wing nerd surge.
Conservative nerd world or something like that.
Yeah, the right-wing conservative nerd surge.
Surge, yeah.
And they've basically colored everything in one under one light. There's not a lot of people out there outside of the conservative nerd that are speaking a lot right now. Most of the people that are that are not conservative and they're nerds are keeping quiet when it comes to things that are involving situations like this whole Gina Carano thing. So another reason why I wanted to talk about it. But that being said, I figured we can all kind of give our 2 cents on, what we think. We're all very much Lucasfilm geeks over here. We've all very much into Star Wars. I know we've all seen Mandalorian, at least season 1, and and so we all know enough about the character. We love the mythos, and we definitely have some love and hate when it comes to the Star Wars movies, the last couple ones at least. Yeah. So there's a lot to be said, but I figured I'd just kind of kick it off and let you guys go with it real quick and give your 2 cents on what you guys are thinking about it. And obviously, if people out there watching, leave your comments in the comment section below, join the conversation. But that being said, I'll kick it off to Sean. Let me. What do you think? As far as,
I was gonna let Graven go first. I was gonna be a gentleman. Yeah, okay. I really want to hear what his take is because I have more than 2 cents. I have 5 cents on this subject. So Grave, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean it's crazy and wild and unfortunate in a lot of different variable areas of topic with this whole thing. It's not just. I wish it was simple, but it's not simple. To be honest, I mean I've followed a little bit about what was going on with her, but I haven't been really deep into all the subjects of what she did and did not do. I've tried to kind of catch up a little bit on it, for the most part. And of course,
we talked just a little bit the other day.
Yeah. So I might not be as informed as you guys are on the situation, but I do know enough to maybe make an opinion to some degree on what's going on with it all. It's very weird because, well, first and foremost, the character that she's doing, Cara Dune, that she plays on The Mandalorian, was a breakout character for her. Like, this was a life-changing character for her. I mean, yeah, she did Fast and the Furious. She did Deadpool. She did Haywire. I think it's Haywire.
Yeah. Haywire.
I loved her in that. Funny enough, didn't even realize it was her. I went back and had to think, wow, that was her. So, great character, great. I mean, for the most part, everyone has loved Gina Carano. I mean, let's not talk about the fact that she's a great icon both for MMA and a lot of different things that she's been doing, but to have this character that she's created and be like this lifeblood for her and see her kind of skyrocket, I was excited. I mean, I know I've talked to Rick about it. Amazing. Like, I wanted to see more of her. I wanted to see more of her show, more of her character. They were going to do a spinoff of her. And then somewhere in the mix of all this, from what I was reading and seeing, and even watched a few interviews with her recently to kind of get caught up on even her point of view of things, is that she just decided at some point she wanted to be a voice in the Twitterverse based on political aspects, based on how she was becoming more of this aware star, of being aware of people's opinions and how impact she could have, things like that. But unfortunately, there's some things she crossed and some lines she crossed that I'm trying to see both sides of it, but sometimes it's hard. You can't really always kind of just pick a side because there's so much that, like me and Rick have talked about before, there's, your side, their side, and the truth. So it gets really muddied, but there was some lines that she crossed for sure. I think the one thing I wanted to talk about with all this, as far as what she did was a series of tweets, right? And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. She got into a series of tweets about comparisons to certain things, especially Nazis and the Nazism with Jews and the Republican Party and how that's all comparative to today, and that how, people, that Nazis didn't start with killing Jewish people. It was neighbors that were being manipulated by propaganda, basically, to paraphrase, to get their neighbors to spy and hurt people. And eventually that rose to hurting in the Holocaust and things gaining power, so to speak. If I'm correct on that. I mean,
she had a specific tweet about being a conservative in America today is comparable to being a Jew in Nazi Germany.
Right.
I think that was the
straw
that broke the camel's.
Yeah.
She also She also had skepticism about like wearing a mask during coronavirus.
Yeah,
right. You know, she voiced some skepticism again about the 2020 election results, stuff like that.
Yeah, talking about fixing the system and being able to investigate every state, and talking about what your beliefs are versus what your self-awareness is, basically. So a lot of that all happened, but apparently it seemed like there was, from her perspective, it was a witch hunt, being bullied. From the other perspective, it was her being abhorrent and insensitive to a class of citizen, as well as a race of people and a belief of people and what they went through. That's crazy. But I wanted to bring up my question on this and posit on this is, we look at actors and actresses for what they do on the screen. And we're watching them become a character. She got that job, that contract to play that character. It's very weird how we associate what their personal voices are with what character they're doing and how that plays a part, and what freedom of speech and freedom of consequences we've talked about too. You're not free of consequences. You might have freedom of speech, but not of consequences. So no matter how it is. So if you're going to play that role, you have to be prepared for the consequences. But there's this weird thing I thought was kind of just a devil's advocate situation, is at what point do we demonize the character or effectively affect the character for the actors and actresses and what they do in their personal space, versus them actually just being hired to play and act a role? They're actually being hired to play a character which has really no form or function to what their personal life is. They're there to do a job, you know. So we're in a weird place where we're assessing their personal choices to their character of what they're being hired to do, which are two separate entities completely if you really get down to brass tacks. You know, it's like someone being hired to be a doctor, but inside they have their own opinion of other things. But, you know, there's a weird line there, I think, sometimes, and that's a whole different conversation. But honestly, I'm not surprised at what happened to her. I know that she's upset about what happened. I saw some reviews about her talking about how she'd never voted before. She'd never been politically engaged at all in her whole career. And this was the first time. And so it being the first time that she's done this, and this is the things that have happened because of it. And so she feels very much like she chose to pick a choice, and she's getting blasted for that.
Yeah.
At no point should any person in the Republican Party feel like they're the same as a Jewish Holocaust survivor or someone who's lost their family in that. That was too incredulous and asinine, I feel. I mean, my thoughts are, yeah, she got what she deserved in some regards. She can't go in full tilt, do those things and not expect it. But my other posit is, can we hold people that accountable when they're just going to be an actor? You're ruining your someone's life over something that they have the freedom to express outside of their job. So that's kind of a weird thing for me. I don't know. I'll let you guys have it from there.
I love your points that you brought up, man. And that's why I kind of wanted you to go first, because you brought up some things that I want to make sure I address too. First and foremost, I love Gina Carano. Me and Rick has this conversation all the time. Like she did a couple, other heist movies. I think right. Batista was in one of them too and stuff. So I've definitely been following her career and definitely a supporter of her. What recently happened, I'll put it like this. I don't think she should have lost her gig over it. Right. There have been other incidents in the past, and I'm going to give you like a little fun list right here if I start looking down or whatever. But there have been some incidents in the past of cancel culture, and I want to kind of address this little quick point of cancel culture and how relevant it is, and if it's this new phenomenon or not. Yeah. And I don't feel like she should have lost her livelihood. I don't think most people, unless in extreme cases, should lose their livelihood over their opinions outside of their work. Right. There have been some people, some who recently passed away, who've been provocateurs on the airwaves, and they've been spewing hate and vitriol, and they've been getting, $1 million contracts over that for over decades. Right. So what she has been saying and doing, I don't feel like warrants her losing this sort of iconic role. Right. And the second part to that is, I think if you just sort of let people go, you kind of lose the ability to have a dialogue with them and to sort of like have some kind of middle ground. Like if they're just automatically being quote unquote canceled, right. We don't reach a point where we're like breaching any divides to either side. Right. With these sort of harsh kind of penalties. Now, what happened to her I understand why it
Mhm.
happened to her. And I think it goes to the profit motive. And
Right.
so I'm going to address that, in a minute. I think there's two main things that's what happening right here. There is what specifically happened to her, right? If we want to look at the details of that, and there's the second part is what is the perception of what has happened to her,
Right.
and how that's being funneled and played through the airways to what Rick was talking about, which is the conservative nerd sphere and stuff, because she is becoming this cultural martyr now on the conservative right.
Mm.
You also mentioned you don't think anybody in the Republican Party should be considered, or put in the same category of Nazi Germany. I think we also need to distinguish between Republicans and people in positions of power in the Republican Party versus conservatives, people
Right.
who consider themselves with conservative values, who may not necessarily like what's going on in the Republican Party.
I agree.
So
Because there's that
there's a
window.
lot of So there's a lot of nuance here.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having this conversation with Rick a couple of days ago, where Rick actually brought it to my attention that, and I recently looked up just a cursory Google search, that this firing was months in the making.
Yeah.
Like they had several conversations with her over the course of months to say, hey, could you tamp it down a little bit? I wasn't in on the conversation, obviously, but I can imagine that they said, this is Disney. We have a certain brand. If you could just kind of tone it down a little bit, it's getting a little excessive. And she refused. So that's one of the reasons why I kind of listen, I kind of understand what's going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Your last point was a good one, right? Like, where do we reach the point of that line where you're being cast to play a specific role versus your individual opinion outside? We have to be able to distinguish between what companies we're being hired for and what those companies represent in the marketplace. Right. So you have certain companies that you could get a desk job at I don't know, GE or something like that, right? And you're less in the spotlight. But we're talking about Hollywood. We're talking about what the public perception is. And Disney specifically has a certain brand that they would like to stick to. So for you to be voicing that type of opinion, and you're an employee of Disney and you're a high profile celebrity, you have to be able to understand what the penalties are.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of free speech, the reason that I have an issue with the whole free speech argument is that, and you brought up such a good point, you have the ability to say what you want, but there are consequences to that.
Mm-hmm.
Based upon, again, the profit motive. Now, if you're working for a certain company and they feel like their profit motive is in jeopardy, they might give you a warning, or they might just get rid of you.
True.
Right? I could give you several examples. Jamel Hill, who is she was on ESPN, a broadcaster for years, and she's known to be on the left. ESPN and her, they came to an understanding they weren't going to renew her contract because of what she was saying about, then President Trump, right? Mm-hmm. And they felt like that was some of what she was tweeting and saying and reporting about him was a bridge too far.
Right.
So they didn't renew her contract, right? Mm. So you have to be willing to understand that there are certain professions and certain industries that have to pay attention to those things, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you some fun examples. I'm going to give you some not so serious examples, but some fun examples at the same time, right? I think the best example in terms of nuance for cancel culture is Colin Kaepernick. Okay. Mm-hmm. Colin Kaepernick is a prime example of somebody who took a stand for something he believed in, who probably was outside of the scope of, what was perceived an NFL player should do or say, right? Or a professional athlete. But you had two different companies who took two different, views on that. So the NFL, in essence, canceled him, right? For kneeling during the national anthem because of their profit, because they were thinking about their profit motive. They said, we might be losing views from conservative America, who is a large, foundation of this brand, consumer brand. So in essence, Colin Kaepernick was not signed to any teams, and there was a whole controversy over that. However, Nike decided to make Colin Kaepernick, one of their brand ambassadors a couple years ago. And you have conservative people burning their Nike sneakers and stuff like that, right? So again, conservatives engage in cancel culture too. But you had two competing companies there where it was like Nike was like, this is good for our profit motive, right? Because we're looking at the millennials and we're looking at what their perspectives are. And we'd rather go with them. We think that they're going to be the majority of consumers going, in the future, versus the NFL, who said our profit motive is probably going to be negatively impacted on that. So that's the best example I could think of, right? Now, here's the list of real quick fun examples, and I'm going to try to get through this real quick, right?
Okay.
And I want to lay this out because I think we lose historical context because we have short memory spans and attention spans, and we think, oh, this cancel culture is just a left extreme new phenomena. This is not a new phenomenon. This is part of America. America engages in cancel culture anytime it feels like.
We just put a new label on it. That's all.
That's all it is. Mm-hmm. And I think the cancel culture specifically, that label has come from the right. Has come from, this conservative branding of certain phenomena that's going on in our culture, just like social justice warrior, right?
Yeah.
So, all right. Number one example I could think of off the top of my head that I wrote down was Madonna in the 1980s.
Oh, yeah.
They tried to cancel Madonna so many times because she was sort of unmasking this puritanical, idea of what a woman should do and act and behave like in music, right?
Yeah.
If you guys remember hip hop in the 90s, you had Republicans and conservative Democrats in Congress trying to slap the public advisory label on hip hop music, and they passed legislation to do that, right? You had conservative Democrats like Al Gore and his wife who went on a huge campaign about that, right?
It's the rock music as well.
So they tried to, hip hop was this bastion of impropriety and, oh my God, clutch the pearls, right? Mm-hmm. We fast forward to the nipple incident at the Super Bowl with Janet Jackson, right? Justin Timberlake got away from that, but my goodness, everybody was in an uproar over Janet Jackson exposing that boob, right? There was an incident where this elderly woman spilled hot coffee in her lap from McDonald's. And everybody's like, oh my God, it's frivolous lawsuit. What's wrong with this woman? And then there was a documentary that came out, Hot Coffee, and they showed the extent of the damage that happened to that woman. She had to get skin grafts and stuff like that. And it was like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize. So again, there's the reality of what's happening. And then there's the perception of what's happening, right? Mm-hmm. And the last two, I would say, if you guys remember the Dixie Chicks.
Oh yeah.
Back in early 2000, during the W. Bush administration, they got on stage at a country music concert and they said, we're ashamed that our president's from Texas. And they were in essence canceled by the right. Okay? They couldn't get a show, shortly after that. And then the last example I'll say is, this is very interesting. I found this out because I went down a rabbit hole of like cancel culture and everything like that. In 1996, there in Oakland, there was an Oakland school district that they came out with a statement saying that we're gonna recognize Ebonics as cultural expression for our African American students and stuff. I
remember that.
You remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And the country flipped out. They got, the legislatures of that school district got called into D.C. into Congress, to have a public hearing. You had school districts in Texas and around the country, passing, legislation to say, hey, we're not going to condone this. Our students, it's going to get to the white students and our black students aren't going to be prepared for jobs and all this stuff. So again, we forget historically that cancel culture has been a part of our social fabric, right? The last thing I'll say is this. We have to distinguish between public figures who are employed by private companies versus political and business leaders at the highest level versus ordinary citizens, right? You have ordinary citizens such as university professors on the right and on the left who've been, in essence, canceled for their beliefs, right? Yeah. And I think there's this what I'll say is there's a difference between who you're working for and what you're sort of allowed to say without having certain negative consequences, right? And the three people that I thought of were LeBron James, Gina Carano, and Colin Kaepernick, right? Colin Kaepernick I talked about before. LeBron James, who is an employee of the NBA, but the NBA has been so much encouraging of players and their outward stances that LeBron James has free reign to say controversial stuff on the left, right? Gina Carano wasn't so fortunate. So we just have to be willing to distinguish the differences between what's going on. And I think that gets lost because we have short-term memory and we're quick to sort of have this victim mentality, like, oh my God, we're being suppressed. I read an article that says that this is not the suppression of free speech. This is what the exercise of free speech looks like, because this is messy. Free speech is messy. Okay? Not everybody's going to agree with what you're saying. But now we have a social media forum where we can pretty much have a YouTube channel and monetize that if enough people agree with what we're saying and dig what we're saying, right? Yeah. So that's my take. That's my 5 cents on it.
All right. I mean, me personally, it's weird because, like Sean initially said, you know, I was definitely a huge fan of Gina Carano for a long time. But for me, I don't know. I think it's weird because there's almost a side of this that makes complete and utter sense. And that one side of this is you can't expect to walk into somebody else's house and say whatever the hell you want to say without there being some consequences. You know what I'm saying?
True.
Where a lot of the media likes to play this, and especially the right-wing media, is they like to act like her freedom of speech is being, oppressed or trampled on.
Yeah.
You know, that's the bullshit. Like that's the what they're trying to sell you, because she said what she said, and she has no trouble continuing to say what she's saying. So it's like it's your freedom of speech is not a problem here. You can say whatever the hell you want to say, and you said it. You know, the thing that the right media doesn't want to have to deal with is the consequences of anything they say. And that's my thing. I think, regardless of how I feel about her, regardless of what I think, whether she should have lost her job or not, I honestly, it's like, it sucks she lost her job, but at the same time, I think she should have lost her damn job. I think she was an idiot, and I think she opened her mouth and said some shit she shouldn't have said. And I think it was fucking common sense. You know what I'm saying? And I think, you know, when you're in a situation like that, if you're an idiot and you're dumb enough to say some shit, then you just deal with the consequences. I don't feel like she, you know, I think there's a time and a place to learn something, and you would have thought by now she would have learned that fucking lesson before she got to where she is by now. Like, she's so far up the ladder at this point. She got to this point and she hasn't learned to not say some shit in a situation. That's like, you don't go into the church and you're waiting, you're just gonna stand in the church, and that's the time you decide to start spouting off some fucking shit about, you know, Satan being the good guy and shit. Like, why would you wait till that point in your life to be sitting right in front of the priest in the pulpit? This is when you're gonna fucking say that shit. You know what I'm saying?
But even the leader of the church, Rick, the priest, he knows not to get caught in a brothel outside of church.
He knows not to get caught.
He knows not to get caught. It's not going to stop him from going, but he knows that he has to keep this on the low.
But that's the common sense that I'm talking about.
Right.
Nobody's saying you don't go to the brothel. You go to the brothel, that's on you. That's between you and your God, and that's between you and yourself. But you know, if you want to maintain that position that you're doing, don't get caught. You know what I'm saying? You know, like Philip DeFranco says, I love when he watching the show. He says, "Don't be stupid." You know what I'm saying? It's just don't do dumb shit. You know?
Well, I think it can be, if I may say, I think it comes down to just something very simple. It can be very much simplified, the whole process. And I hate to use this term, but we are. In America, we're groomed from, you know, childhood when we go to school to do a process and to go through a certain type of rule and procedure process to go into the workforce. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what we're doing. We're being groomed to basically be slaves to a certain work idea and a certain kind of soldiering idea. And so, right, and then we transition over to a job where we get told that if you want this job, these are our rules and procedures that you have to go. And I've worked in PR, I've worked in HR, I've worked in a lot of those things. And there's a huge book of procedures you have to go, and you have to look through it. Right. And as an employee, you have to sign it. So on the simplest note of all this, regardless of political affiliation, regardless of company that we're dealing with, we're all indoctrinated with that idea that if you want a job, and you're going to work for A or B company, these are the procedures you have to follow. And if you don't follow this, we'll give you warning 1, warning 2, warning 3, maybe not even that, and then you're going to have to let you go. If it's just like you not doing the right job on a line somewhere, if you're not cooking the food right and you're not doing things right, we have the right to let you go, even if your opinion may be against what the company wants you to do. So that's really what it is, simply put, for any actor, any employee, period. It's an employee mentality. The moment you have a job, period, and you go into something like Disney, she has worked in the industry long enough to see a lot of her peers already fall into these traps of propaganda and things like that. So she was more educated, I feel, to some degree, about that idea, and she chose to pull the trigger, unfortunately, at a wrong time for her. If she would have went higher up the ranks, maybe not. Maybe she would have let her career go a little further, a little couple more years down the road. Her voice would have been a little more stable. But
there's something to be said about leverage. You know, a lot of situations in life, especially in business, entertainment, they come down to leverage. And I think you posted on the Bloody Nerd, Rick, to the effect of, she should have solidified that new contract if she wanted to, if she wanted to say certain controversial statements or whatever. Get to a point where you have enough leverage, right?
Yeah.
And just based on just listening to you guys, I heard this saying, which is, think with your pocketbook, right? Like, vote with your pocketbook, vote with your wallet. I've heard that statement for years. Like, if you don't like it, in the marketplace, if you don't like a movie, you don't like the Kathleen Kennedy Star Wars movies, which are abhorrent, okay? Vote with your pocketbook, don't, or your wallet. Don't go to the movies. Don't patronize that business. So we all understand that. We have a certain amount of voting power with our dollars, right? Companies have to make decisions accordingly. So I come back to the profit motive. All right. If you are damaging this company as an employee and you're going to stand, in the way of us making more profit that we need to, it's going to be a problem and it's going to be addressed.
Well, I mean, at the same time, and kind of like what Graven was talking about, at the same time, there's also, certain companies do this more than others, or they make this apparent more than others. And this is also something you have to deal with when you're applying for companies. When you're applying for a job, one of the first things you are taught to do is to learn about that company. What is that company's,
mission statement?
Yeah, what's their mission statement? What are they about? Do you want to work for that company? Like, you know what I'm saying? When you dig deep enough, is that company's morals, do they fit yours? Where's their money go? Who are they donating their money to? You know what I'm saying? Like, does it fit the person that you want to be? Like, that's part of it. Like, you don't go working for a company that has completely different views than you do. And then when you start spouting off your views, expect them to not fire you.
Well, I think it's important to distinguish the fact that we're talking about individuals who have the mobility to move from company to company or sector to sector, right? Because majority of Americans probably don't have that as a free will, right? Like if you're at a certain income bracket or a certain, lower working class, you probably don't have as much mobility to say, hey, I choose to work for this company based on what they represent. If a spot opens up and you need a gig, you're going to take it, but you have to follow in line. At this level, though, I agree 100% with what you're saying.
That's not what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm talking about
I absolutely. So I just want to distinguish that because I don't want people listening to say, Well, not everybody has that freedom to choose whatever company they want to
No,
work.
not
We're
at all.
talking about at a certain level.
Yeah. We're talking about at a certain level. If y'all can't figure that out by now, y'all need to keep the fuck up, because that's what
And
we're
I think
talking
on the same level, I myself personally, just from my own personal experiences, want to say that Disney's not without their flaws either.
Of course.
There's a lot of stuff going on there too. So there's a lot of stuff happening on all the levels of things here. So it's not about just one-siding the whole situation. There's a lot of players involved and a lot of decisions that are made to look differently on all the situations.
Honestly, I'd rather Disney not own the rights to the Star Wars franchise, period.
Yeah.
But here we are. Thanks, George Lucas. I mean, you're a genius, brother, but I don't feel like you should have I don't feel like they should have been the purchasers of your product, man. You know.
Well, I mean, you know, and again, it just gets down to, like we said. I mean, if I own the company. I mean, Graven, you're an entrepreneur. You're working on your own stuff. You know, based on selling your own product and selling yourself as a graphic designer as a product. You know, I do the same thing as a graphic designer as a product. Sean is in real estate. He's his own brand as well. You know what I'm saying? Right. If Sean had to hire somebody at some point to come and help him do his job, the same way if you had to hire somebody. You turned around and that person, you know, what people one might not know as far as what Graven is concerned, is Graven's half Native American. You know what I'm saying? If he found out that the guy he hired was anti-Native American, was spouting off some really fucked up shit, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, you're right to be like, get the fuck out. You know, I'm not working
right,
with you.
right.
What the fuck are you thinking? What are you?
Yeah.
You know, like,
and most contracts these days, they have that breach clause, right? Like, you know, it's sort of like at-will employment. I have the right to, you know, dissolve this contract, you know, if I feel like certain things are violated.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, I say that to say I understand it's like, you know, I don't think she should have lost her gig. You know, I get that, you know, having a heart and all that. It's like, yeah, you know, that might have been a little messed up. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like, nah, B, I'm good. You know, as much as I love Gina Carano, I think she really, and again, if it came out that she didn't have any, if this was the first time she did anything, and they just canned her like right out of the gate, then that'd be a different story. But you know, this is not the first conversation he had with her. And one of the things that Sean brought up was a conversation we had. I was talking to Sean the other day, Graven, that I was watching the Graham Norton show, and he had on what's his name from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Chris Pratt.
He had on Chris Pratt. It was the episode where Pratt was talking about how he was in a scene in Parks and Rec, and he had a scene where he was supposed to come to the door, and Amy Poehler was going to open the door, and he was supposed to be naked, and she was going to react to him being naked, and he wasn't getting the reaction from her that he thought she should really give. So he decided that on his own, he didn't tell anyone else, he decided he was going to pull his dick out and open. When she opened the door, he was going to actually have his dick out. And he did
get her real reaction.
Yeah, and he did it. And,
Brilliant.
And she reacted in kind. And, you know, and so after that happened, he got a letter from NBC. They sent him a letter, and they said, you can't do this. You will never do that again. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was a specific list of things that he could not do. You know, and I will put money on it. I don't have that happened to Gina Carano. You know, I'm sure they did the same thing to her multiple times.
Well, they did. I mean, that was one of the main interview that she did with, I believe Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire or what have you. Yeah. She goes into detail that they did. They sent social media team members and management to her home to sit down with her and speak to her. A young lady came in and spoke to her, and she welcomed her in to conversate. Before all this happened, the last couple of tweets and things like that to kind of say, look, we need you to kind of fix this, and this is what we need to do. You know, from Gina's point of view, it was like, you're trying to control me and tell me and bully me into being this perfect little picture, so to speak. And I'm paraphrasing a lot of this. You guys can watch the interview if you want to. But they did give her chances from what she was saying. And at that point, it becomes a business motive. It's like, okay, they're telling you, like you guys said, they're telling you got a warning. At this point, this is your thing. Well, maybe I shouldn't be getting political right now. Maybe I should be watching what I'm saying, because guess what? There's a fine line between politically empowering yourself as well as politically empowering yourself as a woman to young girls and young ladies like that, to be this great character. great character you've got.
Absolutely.
Where you can just be a voice. A lot of young women, a lot of young girls just really just inspired by this character, and you have a chance to really use this vehicle. So long term, yes, could I see her being very vocal and very political as this character grows? Absolutely. Right. But you took the wind out of the sails. The figures are gone. You're not making figures. You're not making shows. Like, my God, what a wasted opportunity to be a strong female like you are and have this opportunity. Is unfortunate on all sides. It doesn't matter the way you look at it. It's just unfortunate, period. Because who suffers besides all the little intricacies of things are the fans. Those little girls who were looking forward to, and young women, and even young men that appreciate that idea and follow those sides. Love it, and they don't have that now, and now we're having to look for a possible replacement. So that's the people who really lost, are the fans and the people who look up to this character. So,
agreed.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, again, it's like you said. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, the fans are the ones that really lose out. It's interesting to me. I didn't watch the Ben Shapiro interview for lots of reasons.
Gotcha.
Because there's only so much I can stomach a Ben Shapiro before I want to start murdering pixies. But what you said from the interview is exactly the problem. Like, they came to her house, they talked to her in numerous occasions, and instead of taking that for what it was, she took that as an actual like they were attacking her, or they were trying to bully her.
She got defensive.
She took it in the defensive and took it personal, like they were trying to bully her and make her do something that she shouldn't do. It's like, why is that? No, this is a job. This is a business. You know what I'm saying? It'd be no different if you were working at McDonald's and every time somebody came and got a fucking, a Big Mac, you spouted off some anti-Semitism, to them. It'd be no different. So you're going to be like, fuck you, McDonald's. You ain't going to bully me into being a nice person. You know what I'm saying?
But to be fair, if you think about it, she is an MMA fighter. So she's been conditioned to be competitive. So she's looking at, her mindset already fits comfortably in the thing where if I see a sign of being bullied or someone being hurt, I'm going to defend or I'm going to protect, even if it's including myself. So I think there's something there too. It might not make it right.
No, I mean, it's not about whether it makes it right.
Yeah, competitive is one thing, but I've seen her on interviews, especially in the start of this role.
Gotcha.
Incredibly humble character. Like I've seen her on interviews. She was so grateful to even having that role and having the chance to like really show what she has in the role and everything. Just
she said it changed her life.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really riding for her.
Me too.
During that time. So there's one thing about competition. Again, when being competitive and being a fighter, you should also know what weight class you're in.
Yeah, true. Right? True, absolutely.
There's a reason for weight classes. So in a situation like this, she
was out of her weight class.
She's out of her weight class, man.
Yeah,
you're picking a fight with a Batista. You know what I mean? Like it's just not going to happen.
True.
Right?
It's like I get that as well. The idea that she's conditioned to see things in a certain way, but at the same time, how long has it been since she's been a fighter? Again, we're talking about she entered into Hollywood, and she's been doing Hollywood now for a long time. You know what I'm saying? She's
probably longer now than she used to
was a fighter, right?
So
at this point, I would
conditioning should now be, how do I get a job and how do I keep it? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do I get myself into this up the ladder? She worked herself up the ladder in the MMA. She did that. She figured that shit out. Right. And now
she was one of the first iconic MMA women champions. Absolutely.
So now
in the early days of
so now the goal is like, how do I figure out Hollywood? And that's where her brain should have been.
Right.
So if she automatically went back to, I'm not going to let you guys bully me, it's like, word, like, you should have been past that by now. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
but my thing is, where's her people at? Who is she surrounded by? Was there nobody that's like, yo, you probably shouldn't be doing this right now. You need to chill the fuck out.
Yeah, that's weird. That's weird.
Because like Sean said, she went from being, I'm so grateful to the Star Wars fans. I'm so grateful to everyone. They love me. She's been at conventions, and she was like, it's nothing but love from these people. This show changed
Yeah.
my life. It put me on a perspective. She's talking about how working with Jon Favreau has changed her life. It put her in a whole new way of being an actor, an actress. And then she goes from all that to like, fuck you guys, I'm gonna say what the fuck I want to say. You can eat a dick. It's like, whoa, bro. Like now you just don't give a fuck about your job anymore. Okay.
Yeah, that's
But,
a really weird left turn.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Rick, because the Star Wars fan base is still riding with her, I would say, even through this whole thing.
Yeah, because
I think that's
they're not seeing the reasoning in this situation.
Well, see, I think that's a perfect segue into the second topic of the day, right? Which is, sort of like the fanboy versus the critique. You know what I mean? Like, I think the Star Wars fan base is a perfect example of, like Raven was saying, so many people, men and women, were inspired by this character and didn't want to see this character leave. And especially what's been going on with the Star Wars universe. Jon Favreau has been, on a correction course with the Star Wars universe again. And Gina Carano is a part of that. I wouldn't say the main part of it, but she's an integral part of it. Right. And now to have this happen, it's sort of like the Star Wars fan base. Are they going with more emotion and failing to see all of the details behind what's been going on here?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's definitely a perfect segue into the other half of this, which the basic premise of the question that I was thinking about was the idea of the difference between a fanboy and a critic. And I think that is really what's going on right now. Like, is it possible to be an unbiased critic and still be a fanboy? You know what I'm saying? Is it possible to be both at the same time? I think it's possible. I don't think but I also think it's rare. Let's put it that way. I think it's possible, but I think it's very rare that most people can be both at the same time. I think it's almost impossible for a lot of people to not let their bias dictate their decision making, even when they're criticizing something, or choose to not criticize it because they love it so much. So that's kind of the question, and just that being said, briefly, what do you guys think about it?
Well, I mean, as far as being a fanboy versus being a critic, I like to believe, I don't know if it's true or not, but I like to believe that I'm a little bit of both. I can be a fanboy and I can critique things and I can look at things at an unbiased area. I can step outside of the situation and try to take it all in. I think that view gets narrowed a little bit for anybody when it gets closer to something they truly love. So it's different if it's something that's just a natural thing that I can appreciate, that I'm critiquing or reviewing, versus something that maybe I might be invested based on childhood memories, childhood love, adulthood love, passionate, life-changing characters that might have played a role in something you've done in your life successfully. I mean, there's different levels to all that, and we're automatically built that way. That if we love something, we give more to it. So if we're, and therefore, sometimes the fandom and the fanboy kind of becomes more easily accessible. So in that level, if that's what you're dealing with. But I think everyone has a moment where they can really be both. But I think sometimes it depends on the topic. It depends on what it is. It depends on what you're talking about, how it's affected you personally or non-personally. But yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about different items, different topics, some that we'll get into later tonight that we'll talk about, that will kind of hit some of those little buttons, even maybe for me. But I think more of the herd mentality that's happening nowadays in the world is seeing more of a divide, where there is more just of a fanboy and there is more of the critic, and there is not meeting in the middle of those situations sometimes. I think it's becoming more aggressive. And I think that's happening because and maybe this might be not near the topic, but I think it has to do with the fact that we're living in the age and the renaissance of the superhero. We're living in the age and the renaissance of comics, of fantasy. We're living in that, both in movies and toys and books. We've always lived in it, but now there's a spotlight on it, and we're past the age of where this is new and fresh, and now it's a norm. So you have a lot of people that are coming on board that's being introduced to all this, looking at it through a lens that's not a fanboy and not a fangirl and not a critic. They're just coming on for the ride. And now they're being able to make their own opinion based on the fact that this is all new to them. versus people that grew up with these things and love these things. And there's a huge clashing of that. That's what's happening. That's what really brass tacks is happening. You have different social classes and cultures of people that are varying degrees of fandom, as well as intellectual criticism and unbiased criticism, that's all clashing at one time, and it's getting wrapped up in the minutia. I mean, that's what I feel.
That's a good point, man. That's a good observation. I'm gonna speak to what's happening inside the nerd sphere, right? Can you back to Rick's question, you know, can you be, a fanboy, a girl, and a credible critic? I think it's extremely difficult to be that. We've been introduced to, this new world of social media where anybody has a voice, and it's very liberating. And I think it's great in terms of people being able to monetize. You don't necessarily have to go through these conventional avenues to get, certified or a degree or something like that to be credible enough to give your opinion. So that's left up to anybody. However, it's the gift and the curse. Anybody can do it, which is good. But then the con to that is anybody can do it. Right.
True.
I think what's been happening is one or two things, or maybe a bit of both, which is in the nerd sphere, you have a huge number of emotional people who are unqualified for the most part, who are the loudest voices in the room. And you have dissenting voices who aren't being heard enough. And then somewhere in the other, you do have, the exception to the rule, which is, yes, you have some people who are part of the nerd sphere, who are fanboys, fangirls, whatever you want to call them, who are credible, at reporting and reviewing film and TV shows and stuff like that. But you're right, Graven, there is a divide going on. And I think that qualifications matter to a certain extent, right?
I agree.
Unfortunately, we judge our success by how we monetize things. Going back to the profit margin again, and how much viewership we get to, and you can do that in a very sort of niche way. You don't necessarily have to be good at everything. You could be good at one particular thing. You can call yourself, you could say, I'm coming out with the Angry Sean review, and I'm going to hate on every single movie. And then people just kind of dig that because, there's something that sparks that, right?
Right.
We have lost the ability to be logical in a way. And there's a divide. The word I'm looking for is tribal. We're becoming very tribal. And I'm just going to look at perfect example is the Marvel versus the DC universe, right? It is extremely difficult to find somebody, and all of us have been in conversations with several people who consider to fashion themselves either Team DC or Team Marvel. It's very difficult to find people who root for both of those houses succeeding, right?
Yeah.
And I think that Marvel, they came out with a better plan, a better action plan, and they're pretty much at the forefront of this new comic universe that we're all living in, right? And it's like you said, Graven, you have people, I've met people, grown people with families who discovered Marvel through the films.
Right.
And then we've engaged in conversations and debates with people who have been reading the comics since they were from childhood, right?
Right.
But that is a very strong fan base, just like the Star Wars fan base.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like every chance they get is to spit on DC and to root for DC to fail. I think that's a problem. I think that's too emotional, and we need to reset, because I'll tell you what, the original MCU, out of those 22 movies from the first Iron Man to Endgame, I've told Rick this on several occasions. I feel like the Marvel fan base has been so emotional and so, engulfed in just, I'm just so happy to see this on screen and nobody better criticize it. This is the best thing I've ever seen. You fail to realize that out of the 22, correct me if I'm wrong, 22 movies that they came out with during that 10-year period, only 6 of them were really excellent movies. 5 or 6 of them, right? We could count them on our hands. The the rest of those movies were average to below average to below average, right? Like
Formulaic.
Yeah, very safe, very formulaic, very, we're just going to give you just enough just so you could get to the box office and we get these numbers and stuff like that. So I think it's extremely difficult. Back in the old school days, you have to go to journalism school, you would have to go to film school, and there is a criteria and a format in terms of how you review these, non-emotionally. How do you go about the business of, fashioning yourself as a credible critic or a movie reviewer, because you have a certain amount of skills that go past your emotion. Okay, you have a criteria, and you can rate that movie against other movies and come to some kind of thing. We've lost that. I think we've lost that. And it's not to say that they aren't those out there, but for the most part, I think it's more emotion that's being talked about right now in the nerd sphere.
Oh yeah,
emotion is running the game.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's everything that was there before still exists. It's just now more people have an ability to speak. So now it's just now we're in a room full of noise. You know what I'm saying? Instead of having a room full of people, the only people that were talking were the critics, the with the school for it, and the journalists and stuff. Now the whole room's talking. Everyone's talking now because everyone has the ability. They realize now, oh, I can say some shit. You know what I'm saying? I can start a YouTube page and start talking shit. And so now everyone's talking. Right. So it's like, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. You just got to do what you got to do because, it's like I'm doing the same thing right now. That's what we're here doing.
Yeah,
so it's like,
us included.
You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? So, my thing, the reason why this is happening here is, like I've said to Sean before, and I've mentioned the Graven, is I don't feel right now, at least right now, I don't feel like there's enough people talking. I feel like a lot of the people that are talking have one perspective. Because I subscribe to a lot of critic YouTube videos, and a good portion of them are on one side of the quote unquote political hemisphere of things. Like they're speaking from one side, and
it's the echo chamber. Yeah,
it'd be great to say that politics shouldn't have to enter into any of this. You know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Probably not more nowadays than ever. It seems like politics are entering into the movie critics and the pop culture criticisms.
And again, politics and economics has always been a fabric of everything we do.
Yeah.
It's been a fabric of sports and entertainment since day one.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that now we have social media, and those voices are becoming louder and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like most of the hottest YouTube channels right now that are pop culture critics, are speaking from the right wing, and that's just one of those things that kind of hit me like a sledgehammer. It's like, wow, why is it I'm not seeing anyone else that is talking and saying things that I agree with, you know what I'm saying, like or even moderately agree with, so that's one of the reasons. And
then you also have some credible people who choose not to get controversial. We've seen that too.
Right? Yeah. Listen, a lot of the people that I find that I agree with on their critiques and their movie watching, that I do feel like are on the left side, the left wing, are choosing not to get involved at all. They're choosing to keep their videos and their shows more just about being a movie critic,
right?
And which I don't have a problem with. It's like, cool, if you want to do that, to do that. The unfortunate part is the other people on the right side are not doing that. and they're not doing it in spades. They're making it all about their politics.
Right. I'll just say this on a personal level. Like, you guys know me, I'm absolutely, profoundly on the left. However, there are some things that the conservative nerd sphere have been pointing out, and I listen to them as well, that I firmly agree with. There is, just one quick example with the whole Kathleen Kennedy and her intervention into Star Wars, and the fact that, she had final say over these movies with an agenda in mind that I think really crippled the franchise. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And they're very astute in pointing those type of nuances out. What I don't get is they expand that into this whole victimhood situation and lack of accountability for certain incidents that happen. It's like, follow your own conservatism. Part of a conservative foundation is supposed to be accountability, right?
Mm.
And now it's sort of like they're sort of playing the victim, and that's what I don't agree with, because you have some brilliant people on the right who, I sometimes I'll send some videos to Rick and I'll say, hey man, I know you don't like this person, but listen to this review. It's detailed, it's nuanced and everything.
Right.
Sometimes Rick will choose to say, man, fuck that shit, man, I don't want to listen to that dude, but but there are some
I ain't got
skilled,
time for that.
there's some skilled people, and I don't want to just kind of put people in a box, even though they do that on their own.
Yeah.
Right. And we're just calling that out. But there are some folks on the left that have the ability to agree with some of the points on the right. I just don't feel like that is reciprocated, on the other side as often. Right. Because even during this Gina Carano situation, I've noticed that there's some people on the left that have been speaking out against this as well. Right. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, it's nuanced, but we have to be able to call out, exactly what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean the thing with and that's one of the things I was going to get to. The thing that, like, what the right will tend to do is they will bash cancel culture. You know what I'm saying? And they will go against the whole cancel culture thing, and bash it. And that's kind of where, like, the left and the right will agree on certain things. Where they're both bashing, because that's what they're doing with the Gina Carano. They're calling it the cancel culture, and they're bashing it. The difference is with the right is that they never own up to the fact that they also, when they bash cancel culture on the left, they're bashing it on the right. When they bash it on the right, they're bashing the left.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? They
right.
look at cancel culture as being a left thing, and it's all the left and the Democrats, and they're the ones who are cancel culture. You know what I'm saying? They never take responsibility for the fact that they involve in cancel culture as well on the right.
Culture as well, right?
That's the thing that they don't do.
Right, and that was my point of bringing up those examples earlier.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The right, the left will get involved in cancel culture right now with Gina Carano, but the left sees cancel culture as some other thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of left people don't see cancel culture as right. They'll see it as some other mysterious thing that exists over here, and it's a whole other thing. Cancel culture is a group of mysterious people in the shadows, and we don't like those people.
Right.
But when the right do it, they're literally pointing themselves at the left.
Right.
Yeah, I think with the cancel culture thing, it's being touted as not just what you're saying. You guys are all correct on that, but it's being utilized to fit different narratives depending on the impact of what it needs to be used for. It's a weapon. And it's being utilized. So on one side, they're looking at it like, we need it because that's weeding out a lot of the negative people that are doing horrible things, and we need to have them have consequences. So, yay, cancel culture. We need you to do that. And then on the other side, it's bad because, no, we don't need this because it's destroying careers and it's
excessive,
unfair.
It's overreach.
It's bullying. So there's a coin on both sides of that term that's being utilized and being forcibly chosen for battle, depending on which side is utilizing it in what context. Right. So that's what's happening. You see it on all different social media areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a time when not very long ago, there was a time when the cancel culture was definitely more of that, where especially on the left side, it was definitely more of being used as a way to weed out people that they didn't want to be involved in media and the industry anymore. But what's happening now is, I think, especially the younger generations are getting tired of it. Like, they're, what I'm saying, a lot of them are getting tired of it. It's almost like it's overstaying its welcome, to a point where now you start seeing a lot of these kids, even on the left, that are riding for Gina Carano because they feel like cancel culture is going too far. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's like, okay, now you're fucking taking away the people I like, and I don't agree with you no more, and this is getting out of hand. And that's kind of where they're looking at it now. So now the people that you thought were riding for cancel culture are starting to not ride for it anymore.
Right.
So, it's just, again, like you said, it is a weapon. It is a thing that is being used for specific reasons, but now it's almost like who's using it. Like I felt. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like in the beginning of this, you could have, like, you could see like, okay, the cancel culture is coming from, or at least this new version of cancel culture. I mean, the canceling people has been a thing, like Sean said, but this new cancel culture that we've labeled it, after the whole Me Too movement, was seemingly coming from one side of the sphere. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Seemingly. But now it's like you can't tell who's, like, where is it coming from now? It's like everyone's doing it now.
The lines are blurring.
Yeah, the lines have kind of blurred so much now. It's like it's just coming from everywhere now.
And it's happening in every industry whatsoever. Yeah. It's not just political. It's happening in every type of industry as a tool.
But I also do say, like you said, it being a weapon, I also say that it's gotten to the point now where people just use it as a crutch.
Absolutely.
Because Gina Carano didn't get fired because of cancel culture.
Right.
Gina Carano got fired because she made a stupid decision and got fired from her job. And then people just use that as, it was cancel culture. Because she made stupid statements, people got on Twitter and did this whole cancel Gina Carano hashtag. And then now that she lost her job, people on the right specifically, and now some people on the left who are buying into it, believe that the hashtag cancel Gina Carano is what got her to lose her job. I would love to believe that we had that much power in this situation. No, that's not what got her to lose her job. You know what I'm saying? Disney fired her because of whatever was going on between them two, and she decided to go her own way, and she lost her damn job. They didn't. Right. If Gina Carano had not said anything else after the first couple things she said, if she didn't come out with that last thing with the Nazi Germany thing,
right?
And because they were trying to cancel her before the Nazi Germany thing, the hashtag Gina Carano. If she hadn't come with that last thing, she still would be employed by Lucasfilm and still be doing her thing. And they wouldn't have listened to they weren't listening to no hashtag cancel Gina Carano.
Agreed.
But only hashtag was doing was all hashtags do, and the things like this is they just enhance focus on the topic. It doesn't I think ultimately make the decision, because like you said, it was already in the pipeline. But all it did was help exacerbate and grow the public knowledge of what was happening. It puts a spotlight on things, and that way it either can rally the choice a little more for the company that's dealing with it, or it opens up a different view to the company to say, hey, maybe we're not looking at it correctly. Because don't think for a moment that their social media teams and their HR and their PR companies were not watching that hashtag and seeing how people's voices were being seen. So that they could move and weave depending on how they're going to handle this situation with her, even above and beyond that was already in the pipeline. That's just what it is. So it's a powerful, powerful, powerful weapon and tool, depending on how you use it. And it can work for the good and it can work for the bad. Because it has, in some level, I hate to say it, has helped put a spotlight on some things we all really needed to know for certain people. But there is a fine line. I mean, don't think for a moment, I don't think for a moment that she did not realize that even looking at her Marvel castmates, people in the Marvel side of things with Disney, they're all held to an extreme contract for how they represent themselves outside of these movies. Chris Evans can't go around being a certain way because it's going to come back and bite him as Captain America. You know what I mean? Like he said, and he's been very political. And there's arguments for that too, I'm sure, because he said certain things and been certain ways because of it. And you've had a large group of people saying, well, he's Captain America. That's what he should say. So, there's a weird dynamic there. But even Letitia Wright coming out with some of her thoughts about things from Black Panther and her political stances came back to bite her as well. Right. So it's been known. It's not like this is unknown. Like this is a whole new thing that she had no idea about. She had to know something. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I do disagree. Just one last thing on this, from me anyway, is I do disagree with the way Disney went about ultimately firing her, because I think she said in an interview she found out through social media. I do disagree with that.
That was wrong.
Yeah. But this was definitely a long time coming, and I think she was given multiple chances and discussions. But if you're gonna at this level, you should have that last conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's only respectful. Be
Yep.
respectful in kind.
Yeah. 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 I mean, yes, Disney should have took the high road, and definitely stayed on the high road, and talked to the girl and let her know face to face that you're fired. Um, whether or not the respect was reciprocated on both sides, I don't think it was.
Right.
Hmm.
Because she obviously didn't respect them enough to do what she was supposed to do. But
Right.
maybe but that's the thing. If she chose, hey, you know what, I'm going to be a martyr and I'm going to be that person, and I don't need this job. Cool, then go ahead and do that.
Yeah,
I hope it works for you.
I
You know,
doubt that's what she wanted, though.
no, no,
I
that's not
mean,
what she
maybe
wanted.
No.
you
You
know,
know,
I think now she's realizing she could play this martyr thing up for what it is, but I don't think that was her initial.
yeah,
I honestly believe at some point, and just to give her a little bit of credit here, I do think that she felt that she was standing up for her beliefs.
Oh, absolutely.
She failed to read the tea leaves and on a broader sense, but I
Right.
think just personally, I think she felt like, I'm not going to be able to look myself in the mirror if I back down at this point. And that's American too,
Yeah.
yeah,
but you have to be ready for the consequences.
Sure.
yeah, yeah. I mean, she let herself get caught up in all the fervor that people like Ben Shapiro have been sweeping up from for years. And I think the problem is going to be when after all of this dies and the dust dies down and no one's talking about it no more. People like Ben Shapiro ain't gonna be picking up the phone and giving her no phone calls, and she ain't gonna have no work. So, it's
Well,
like,
I read that she made an announcement with Ben Shapiro that she's going to work on filming a
Yep.
movie with
oh
him.
yeah. She's gonna
Yeah,
do it.
something like that. But we'll
Yeah.
see how far that stretches
No, yeah,
and
we ain't
what's the
gonna.
dynamic
Yeah,
there.
we ain't gonna see nothing. That's exactly what's gonna happen. Because that ain't gonna go nowhere. So,
Right, right.
but anyway, moving on
Yep.
to the last thing that we're gonna kind of get into, real quick, just real quick.
Yeah.
One of the things that's just recently popped off was the whole them casting a Supergirl for the DC movie portion of things, not the TV. The TV Supergirl has been done, and the show was canceled, and they moved on from the TV Supergirl, and they cast the female Supergirl, obviously, for the movies now.
Right.
And which is great. You know what I'm saying? But everybody obviously had a problem with the fact that she was a brown haired, girl with dark
Brunette.
features, a brunette,
Mm.
and she wasn't blonde. The only reason why I bring this up is, again, like I said earlier, and before we started all this, is trying to bring some logic and knowledge to some of these sweaties out there who are just operating off of emotions and may not have the information. And I think a lot of them don't understand um, that it doesn't make any sense for Supergirl to ever have been blonde, blue eyed anyway. Especially when you look at the origins of the whole Superwoman slash Supergirl situation. That there was a Superwoman first before there was a Supergirl, and Superwoman was a brunette. So it's almost like they're mad now because they did something that they feel doesn't make any sense and is out of the norm. But what about when they made the character? Like, that was something that was out of the norm and didn't make any sense then. So it almost, to me, like, I think I had this conversation with both of you, and I forgot which one of you said this, but it almost seems like they're correcting something. To me, that's the way it seems. It's like, this is a correction. It's not like, oh man, you're doing something wrong. Like, you changed the character from. This makes more sense to me as more of a correction than anything else.
Mhm.
Like, why would she ever be blonde haired, blue eyed? Especially when 90% of the time that I've ever seen Kryptonians, they've usually always been brunettes. Like, I mean, that's even in the cartoons. I've rarely ever seen,
Mhm.
rarely. Like, it's happened. The one time they had the cartoon where I forgot which one it was, where Superman saves Kandor, and which is where Supergirl is from.
Right.
Kandor was a city in Krypton, and Brainiac grabbed Kandor off of Krypton before it exploded and miniaturized it and put it in a bottle, and he kept the city.
Yeah.
And Superman saves Kandor and brings it back and finds a planet with a red sun to put it back on, and her parents were still alive in Kandor, and I think, if I'm not correct, their parents had light hair and blue eyes, whatever. That was the only time I've ever seen that. Most of all the Kryptonians I've ever seen have been brunettes. So to me, it was an obvious thing that it was a correction, and the only reason why I bring it up is because it seems like people just need more information. You know what I'm saying, on the history of these things.
Yeah.
You know, so I know Graven is a huge comic book head, more so than I was even as a kid. I know he knows the history of all this stuff. Sean, was in the comic books as well, but not as much as me and Graven, but he was in the comic books as well. But this is a lot of information that even he's learning now as well. We were talking the other day, and we looked this up on Wikipedia and found all this information out as well. So that being said, I was just going to bring it up. I don't know if Graven, if you have any thoughts on the whole upheaval of this whole nonsense.
Well, I mean, that's the weird thing about it, because it gets back to the point we stated earlier today about being a fanboy, fangirl versus being a critic. I mean, it wraps all up into that type of situation that's happening on a larger level. We're having a large swath of things swing into a certain direction where all the movies are being looked at under a microscope now, as far as how they cast and correct certain characters, and how we can bring more inclusivity to the openness of people of color and creeds and different type of ideology, and how we can represent certain situations within these characters more. And that's all well and fine. I think that's awesome, because being, part Native myself, I want to see, those characters be addressed a little more. But, and that's awesome if we can have those things. And we have to some extent, but not really truly what it should be, I don't feel. So while I'm happy that they're trying to say, hey, this is what we're trying to do, I think that you can only expect a knee-jerk reaction with something like this. You can only expect that right now, because you have people have gotten to know Kara as Supergirl for so many years that's like someone taking the Hulk and making him orange all of a sudden. Someone's going to say, that's not the Hulk. It's just not that. And I think that's where people are drawing the line at. They're seeing smaller things with changes and saying, wait a minute, that's not what it is, because that's not what I'm used to. This goes back into what you love versus what it means to you. So yeah, you are correct. Like, as far as color of hair and the things that relationships of family with the Kryptonians and things like that. I mean, there's been a few brunettes, both as Superwoman as Supergirl as well. You have Sir El, which was one of the later versions of Supergirl, who was dark-haired as well. She was a big situation that was towards the end of everything, right before Linda Danvers, and then you got Superwoman of Earth 3, which is from the Crime Syndicate, and she's brunette. She's an Amazonian-looking Superwoman. You even have there was Laura Kent for a while, or Laurel Kent for a while as Supergirl, which was a gender-bended universe where you had the Superwoman of that Earth was a female Clark Kent type situation. So you have a lot of different variables there. It's just the blonde kind of stuck as they went with different types of Supergirls and Superwomen. I mean, Lois Lane was technically the first Superwoman before Supergirl was even around, like we talked about. And a lot of that wasn't even her physically getting any powers to begin with. It was her dreaming. Yeah. She was dreaming that she had powers, and then Superman decided to kind of help give her that dream in reality in a couple issues. And then there was even a thing where Luthor got involved and made it with magic and Mixaplex and got involved and gave her those opportunities.
She actually got that.
Yes. So, I mean, I think what the outcry is, but people don't want certain changes because those characters are kind of right for themselves. And then when you try to change it, it's almost like you're taking away the value of what that character is supposed to be initially, even to the smallest design scale of things. But I don't think it's a bad thing, per se, to say, hey, let's have her that way. But I could also see where people would be irritated by it. But there has been brunette Superwomen and Supergirl. There's less Supergirl brunettes, technically, but they have been there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then you don't even think about Power Girl. You got Power Girl on the other side. Yes, she's still blonde, but it's just so many. There's been a lot between alternate Earths and different storylines, and I could go on for days about it. But that's where it's coming from. So it's not impossible. Same thing with the argument that's happening right now with Superman and possibly Michael B. Jordan playing a new Superman and all that. That's a whole other topic of things that are going on right now too.
What I would say is it's a mixture of two main things happening from my perspective. And I'll defend the public reaction a little bit here, which is, number one, again, we've lost historical context in a lot of these discussions. So we live in the world of, quick reactions. We have short-term memory spans. So everything is this impulse reaction, it's emotional, and we lose the history behind some of these decisions being made, number one. But the second thing is, I think the public has been traumatized, especially the nerd sphere. They've been traumatized by some of these more radical decisions being made to correct certain deficiencies in terms of representation and diversity. But I've always had an issue with retconning established canon and established characters to just kind of force this new diversity role versus coming up with new unique storylines to fit more within certain identifiable communities, right? Like I would love to see like I'm wearing a Black Panther right now, shout out to Chadwick, right? And everybody involved in the creation of that movie. But Black Panther was an established character from, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the 60s, right?
Yeah, easily.
I would love to see more like newer established, characters with African American, Caribbean American, Latin American, Native American representation. For sure. For you to try to now retcon already established characters,
right?
And just for the sake of diversity, I think again you're not going to get the reaction and the support that you would have gotten.
Sure.
If you decide to go through it that way. So I do think that the public is traumatized by some of this stuff, and when instead of recognizing something for specifically a correction, like Rick says, now this gets thrown into the whole soup pot as, oh, here we go again. You guys are trying to switch things up on us, right?
Right.
But there's a lack of education and knowledge there historically. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. And then you got to add to that, you've got the weirdness of, like we talked about a little earlier, is that as things keep going, as these movies keep getting made, and as fans grow up from little children to adults during our period, as well as younger and my boys, you're going to have a strong divide of knowledge base. That half of that knowledge base is just going to get their knowledge of these characters based on the plethora of movies that's been created, and cartoons that's been created.
Absolutely.
The comics history is going to be washed away, because eventually the populace that don't read comics is still larger than the people who abide by that and research that. So you're going to lose it. So you're going to have two groups of fandoms that we're starting to see, like I talked about earlier. And we're going to start seeing more of it, where one group is going to say that's not what happened because that's not in the movie. That's not the history of the character. The movie is correct. That's not correct in the book. That never happened.
Right.
And so it's going to become more aggressive in those thought processes, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I'm getting at too. Like what Sean said, is the fact that we have no frame of history. Like there's no one that gives or cares about the real origins of these characters, and mainly because nobody wants to do the work to actually look into any of it. They just rather take everything that the movie says for face value, and that's it. It's like, oh well, the movie said this, and so this is what it is, and they never bother to look in. There are definitely lots of people that do. They'll see the movie and go, oh, I want to know more about that character. And they'll go pick up a comic book, or they'll even just do some research. But a majority of people just don't care. They just get what they get on the screen, and that's it. And that's definitely bothers me. It definitely bothers me. But it's also something that becomes obvious as something that we've been doing over and over again for generations. This is nothing new. We've been doing this over and over again.
Oh yeah, it's played out. Yeah,
we don't pay enough attention to our history at all.
Right.
Well,
And the other thing I'll say is the other reason why I think it's interesting to bring this to have this question is my personal feel about it is the people that are bitching and moaning about her being changed to a brunette and that she should stay a blonde and blue-eyed are the same people that will find a way to bitch about something that they don't feel should exist because it doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying?
I got you.
So like if let's just say we created Supergirl today, like Supergirl was created in Man of Steel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? The Man of Steel movie, they created a Supergirl, and she steps out of the thing with blonde hair and blue eyes. They would be like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. You know, how is he related to her? And she's blonde hair and blue eyes. Because, again, you know, whether you want to call it cancel culture or not, there's always somebody that's going to bitch because it doesn't fit what they feel like it should fit. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are bitching because she's an Hispanic female. That's the other big portion of this.
I got you.
It's not just that she's a brunette. They're bitching because she's a Latin female.
Oh.
You know, which to me, okay, she's Latin, but on screen she's not a Latin female. She's just a female.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like her Latin heritage doesn't come up unless it's brought up. Like you know,
right.
It doesn't need to be a thing. Like just because she's Latin doesn't mean, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just it just works that way. It's fortunate for her that even though she's a Latin female, it doesn't. It's not like she's a black female. That would be obvious. Like you can't not.
Queen. I mean, what is it? What's her name? Queen Cleopatra was played by what's her name?
Yeah,
Elizabeth
Taylor.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah.
Was played by, you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, come on, man. We can get into that. Remember the backlash with Christian Bale when they did that movie. The what was the name of that movie?
The Gods of Egypt.
Gods of Egypt.
Gods of Egypt,
I believe.
That didn't go well at all. Like they lost their shit. That movie was banned in Egypt. They weren't even allowed to come film in Egypt because of the whitewashing in that movie.
Yeah, sure.
You know? So, but again, so that's what I'm saying. It's like
it's been done before, is my point.
It's definitely been done before.
Definitely been done before.
And it's just, to me, it's the same people that would bitch and moan about that. The same people that would find that no, this is wrong, are the same people that are saying we shouldn't change her from a blonde to a brunette. But it makes sense that she would be a brunette. But okay, you know, again, I agree with what you're saying. Makes sense. At the end of the day, I think it goes back to the bigger question of this whole thing about being a fanboy and a critic. You know, is it possible to not let your emotions dictate your actions, and just be unbiased and look at the logic of the situation?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Or is it even possible for that to happen, or is it just an impossible thing? At the end of the day, I think that's the overarching thing of this whole conversation today. Because that again seems to be an emotional outburst.
Right.
Know? Not a logical one.
Right. And we can't I don't always want to put it on, just for me, I don't always want to put it on all the fans either and their issues to some degree, because there's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger issue here that no one really addresses, and I've never really spoke about it. But a lot of it has to do with I feel, okay, it's just my feeling, my opinion, take it or leave it as you will. But a lot of this has to do with the folly of the studios. And why I'm saying this is because we have spent, even in my lifetime growing up, too many times getting to know the origin of these characters. It's old. Marvel is being able to bring in more characters and more extensions of their universe because they're sticking to a plan and not rehashing things over and over again until they get the perfect model. Unfortunately, DC has been doing that. So there's multiple reboots of Spider-Man or Superman. There's multiple reboots of Batman, and we're done. You can't have a chance to bring in a nice, amazing, awesome character that represents somebody new because you're too busy telling the origin stories.
That's a great point.
We're done with that. We need to get really past that so that you can give more characters screen time or have writers grow new characters that people can look up to. And that's what's really deafening. That's what I feel. And it's not against DC in general. I love DC too. It's just this is what's happening over how many, decades of movies. How many times do we need to know about Luthor? How many times do we need to know about Brainiac? How many times do we need to know about, all these things? Give us some new characters. Stay. If it's a bad movie and it didn't work well, great. Everyone knows who Clark Kent is. Everyone knows who Lois is by now. If they don't, they can watch a cartoon. They can watch something that's being made. They can go back in the archives. Let's have a new movie. Let's bring Lobo in. Let's bring some other characters in. Let's bring some more females in. Legions of superheroes. Let's get it in there so people can say, oh, there's somebody for me to represent and look up to and love it. We're not getting that.
What you're bringing up, Graven, is a perfect topic for another podcast, which is the loss of creativity in development and writing. You know, but it's funny because you mentioned that, and right away I thought of the new what is it, Superman and Lois series that just dropped, right?
Right.
Yeah, right. I don't think it has anything to do. I mean, I agree with the lack of creativity in Hollywood, but I don't think what Graven's saying has nothing to do with creativity. That has everything to do with corporate. And that's
it goes hand in hand though.
Well, you know, I mean, corporate people don't have creativity. But
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? But
exactly.
It's not about the creativity. It's about them doing what they feel like is a sure thing. They're not willing to take chances anymore on characters that are on the fringe of the comic sphere. They're all about sure things. You know, and that's all it is. These corporate people.
And that goes back to the profit motive.
Yeah,
it's equivalent of first event books. Yeah. It's the equivalent of new event book arcs that keep being recreated over and over. It's the equivalent of that's just happening in the movies.
Yeah.
Number one, it's all over.
You talk about bringing in these characters like Lobo and all these stuff, and you know, for a lot of corporate people, they see characters like that. They're like, wait, who is it? Who? What? I don't know this guy. Like, how does this guy? You know, what does his demographic look like, and how does he read to the customer base? You know what I'm saying? How many people are we going to get in the seats with this character? You know what I'm saying? Right. That's all they're looking at. They don't give a fuck about the creativity aspect of it at all.
Meanwhile, Marvel's cashing checks. Whether they're average or mediocre, they're still rolling. And you know, and they've done the legwork, and they're allowing it, so they can mess up in a show like WandaVision with something, or they can mess up in Loki, or they can mess up in a certain movie and not bat an eye because they've set their foundations. Well, their certain core characters are still there.
Yeah, and they can mess up in Spider-Man.
Correct.
Because like with the last Spider-Man, they decided to not reboot, to not restart his character with the origin story again.
Right.
And change the origin story aspect of it.
Correct.
And it's garbage.
And it's hurt. Yeah.
You know, again, this goes back to the history.
Yeah.
Fortunately for them, there's not enough people. Well, there's a lot of people, but they don't care to bother to worry about the history. So rebooting the new Spider-Man and changing the origin story doesn't affect this whole new group of people who are getting involved in the Marvel movies. It affects a huge group of the fans that have been following Spider-Man since they were children, and that's generations of fans, you know, that have been following it. But the new group of people, they don't give a fuck because they don't know nothing about Spider-Man's origins.
Correct.
So it doesn't bother them. So that's who Marvel's banking on. Marvel's banking on the new group of fanboys that are coming in, not so much on the old school fanboys.
I can see that.
So but anyway, real quick, let's introduce Sean. Since we're talking about some of the new stuff coming up and we talked about the matter of fact, Sean, did you see the trailer for the new Lois and Clark?
Yeah, I saw one trailer.
You watched the trailer? Okay.
Yeah, I saw the trailer. While
Graven is getting that ready real quick, let me comment on that real quick. Because we talked about this, I think we talked about this yesterday. We did talk about this yesterday, about the fact that the new trailer, the new show has Superman looking like an idiot because they put him in a bodysuit.
The bodysuit.
Yeah, because if you look at Tyler from the Supergirl series, he has a Superman suit on, but no bodysuit. And he's in shape. That dude's in shape. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think it looked fine, the way he looked in it. But for some reason, in the new Superman movie, or new Superman TV show, they decided we want him to look like Henry Cavill. And they put him in this bodysuit, and he just looks clownish. It looks clownish, man. It makes no fucking sense to me. I do. Graven brought this up the other day. I do love the Golden Era suit that they put him in, though. The original.
Oh yeah.
with the black and red ass.
The Fleischer suit, yeah.
Fleischer suit. Yeah, that was awesome. I appreciated that. But he looks like a bobblehead walking around in reverse.
Floating head.
Yeah, reverse bobblehead walking around. But anyway, yes, there's some new things that are coming out. What's the first one we're gonna talk about?
Well, the first one is that I thought was interesting is that I'm a big '80s fan, as you can see behind me.
Yeah, sure.
I'm a big guy like that, figuratively and literally.
Mm-hmm.
So G.I. Joe was a big thing of mine growing up. I love G.I. Joe.
Yes, G.I. Joe.
But apparently, and they've been, they did the first 2 movies, right, live action movies, and they kind of were lukewarm, somewhat, And then
if you want to call those movies,
yeah, right, exactly. Sideshows, so to speak. Yeah. And then they've done a new, and that's my Fanboy coming out. Sorry, guys, a little slip up there.
Yeah, this is the Fanboy section.
Yeah, we're gonna transform into that for a moment. Anyway. They are working on a new Snake Eyes movie that they're in development with right now that looks and feels promising, so we'll see how that goes. But now Amazon is, as we know, Amazon's picking up properties left and right. They're trying to build their media empire a little further with what they're doing to compete with Netflix and Disney Plus and all these other streaming services. So they have now started announcing that they're doing a G.I. Joe live-action TV series, which you're like, oh, this is awesome, and it's going to be centered around Lady J. And it's in the works. It's going to be her as the main character, and it's coming from Paramount TV Studios and E1 and Skydance TV. So, as far as like the premise of it, it's a standalone story, from my understanding, and centers around Jay herself. It'll also be connected apparently to a larger G.I. Joe universe. And of course, that's kind of it. It's unclear if Adrienne Palicki is going to Palicki, I believe. Palicki is going to come back. Yeah. Because she was in the Retaliation, I believe, film. But apparently this is going to be a standalone new introduction of her character that may be, it hasn't said for sure that I could see, but it may be the Jay from Snake Eyes, if Lady J is going to be in the new Snake Eyes.
Snake Eyes.
So, gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to do it regardless, I hope that they do it that way. I hope that she's the Lady J from Snake Eyes, because then it makes more sense. I just think it's hilarious that you want to create a live action G.I. Joe universe, and the show you start with is Lady J. It's a G.I. Joe universe. You don't start with Duke. You know what I'm saying? Right. You don't start with any of the main characters, like the main characters. You start with Lady J to initiate your G.I. Joe universe.
Right.
Seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, though. I mean, that's just the direction of what a lot of things are going. I don't have a problem with it if the character is built correctly and written with a character arc, which, if they give it the Captain Marvel effect, where she's invincible and she doesn't have trials and tribulations that she has to get over, and they don't craft a correct hero story, then it's going to flop just like everything else. They could even switch it up and be edgy and focus on Destro, or focus on Cobra Commander, and if they want to focus on the Cobra side, right? Pick any hero from the G.I. Joe side you could focus on, sure. Right. But if you really want to get edgy, you could focus on the Cobra side as well. But we'll see.
I just don't. It just doesn't make sense in the hierarchy. So you're gonna introduce her as the main character, but she takes orders from other people. So you're gonna introduce all these other people in her story.
Unless you change her rank, unless you Mary Sue it and you change her rank and you give her.
Which is possible. But then you're setting up a universe now where she's at the head of the forefront of this whole thing. Right. It changes everything now. Like everything starts to move around.
Absolutely.
You start to move, shuffling all these different things around. I don't know. It looks like it's possible to be another Black Widow situation. Because their characters are similar. I don't know. Hopefully the Snake Eyes movie is good.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. It needs to be good. Yeah. That's the problem. Yeah. These properties need to be good. Yeah. Right. And honestly, G.I. Joe is not a hard commodity to get right. It's not hard. We have seen time and time again that America, Hollywood, knows how to make army films.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to make it, both on big budget, low budget. It can be made.
Mm-hmm.
So these characters are not so fantastic that it's impossible to put properly on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I think G.I. Joe should have always transitioned from what we were watching as children to a very serious note with some intriguing and surprising concepts.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that it's the easiest thing to get right, and because people are constantly keeping it cheese or thinking because it's from the 80s that it should be handled as such, it's continually failing. The most fanciful characters you have in there is Destro and Cobra Commander and Serpentor and those things. When you get really outside of that,
about Serpentor.
You have those. But when you look at the Joes, there's not very many, outrageous characters. As far as like there's a mutation or there's some type of creature or there's some type of thing that happened to them. There's some traumas with each one of them, that they could even explain out to. They could do sideshows. They could do different types of offbeat shoots. If they got G.I. Joe right, then let's have a Lady J series, G.I. Joe Lady J. Let's have G.I. Joe Scarlet. Let's have G.I. Joe, Spirit or Quick Kick or any of those things if those characters impacted people properly, but they don't do that.
You just reminded me of the original Predator movie with Schwarzenegger.
Right.
You had different characters there that you got attached to in a short amount of time.
Absolutely.
And that was a military-esque sort of movie, right? It was a military operation. So that was done really well.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the crazy thing about all this. I mean, look at Extraction with Chris Hemsworth.
Oh gosh,
You had Extraction.
That was a good one.
Do that with G.I. Joe.
It's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Right. It was a fun movie. Nothing to be taken too seriously, but it was a fun movie. Yeah.
Get the producers and the writers of John Wick on board. Let's really get serious if you want to. Let's take the Continental and that whole idea and transition that to the Joes versus Cobra. You're getting into something. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Take and pick and choose.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been haphazardly played with to such a degree that it's become folly in and of itself. It's a joke within itself.
Sure.
Even with the cartoons, to some degree. I think the last good G.I. Joe cartoon was Renegades. And that was pretty solid for the most part. But I don't know. I mean, apparently the guy who's got an overall deal with Amazon on this. I mean, he's the showrunner for and producer for the Carnival Row series. From what they're saying, he's also been part of the Man in the High Castle. He was a producer on that.
Oh wow!
He worked on the 3rd series of Daredevil. He has a current deal with a couple of the other major talent teams in there. So I mean, like those are not different credits to shake a head at. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's actually
those are good signs. So maybe there's some hope here. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, what was the other one?
The other one was something that Rick's been looking forward to now for a while.
Yeah, I'm sure I have.
This one, actually, HBO Max has been working pretty predominantly on keeping the revival of Aquaman going, because of what happened with James Wan and how well that movie did, and they're working on a second one, too.
Okay.
But apparently they're working with rebooting, and all the producers, as well as the director, James Wan, has been working on this other property to tie the two together, and that is the cartoon push of Aquaman King of Atlantis. It's an animated series that's being brought onto HBO Max.
Okay.
The thing of it is that this is a hyper stylized comic cartoon, in the look and flair of Thundercats Roar.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get some visuals for you. See what you think about this. Take a look at this for you. I think I just sent you some information. If you can pull up on your messenger or what have you there, Sean, you can take a quick look up a link here. Maybe be able to see that. Yeah, in the I'll put it up in chat. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, on the chat.
I'll do that. Yeah. So, give me 1 second. But I think Rick has seen this. Rick, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean,
on all this.
Okay.
Oh
Oh no. Oh no.
I mean, I don't even have as much of a thought on this as Graven does. We don't have the time to get into that, because Graven could do a whole show just on this alone.
Yes.
Because I've heard him talk about this ad nauseum.
Oh, man.
When it comes to the art style, it makes my brain hurt. It really does. Like, it just does. Like, I'm sorry. It makes my brain hurt. You know, I don't get it. I don't understand why this is the art style of this generation. I guess, like,
Wow.
like every cartoon seems to go this art style. You know,
Yeah.
and you know, what is it? It's like, this is the mutation, the lazy man's mutation of the Cali art style. Is that what it is?
The Cal art style, yeah.
Yeah, it's just so horrendous, man. It's such a horrible look. I just don't get it. I don't. When it comes again, I hate saying this because I feel like we sound like the old men from our generation when we were kids. Back in our day, you know what I'm saying? Back in our day. But I mean, if you look at the art styles of the old He-Man, you look at Thundercats, you look at even G.I. Joe for that matter. How does this make any sense? This is garbage. I mean, back in the 80s, you even had the what was it, Toy? In Japan, they did Robotech, and I mean, come on, bro. You look at Robotech, you look at all those, like
all the Takara stuff.
Like, the animation was amazing back then.
Before its time, for sure.
And now you have this, looks like somebody sneezed into a napkin. You know, I don't know,
It reminds me of Dexter, the Dexter cartoon. The little guy with the lab coat on.
Yeah,
Dexter.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. It's like a hyper stylized version of that.
Listen, I have no take on this. I'm actually speechless for once. So
I'm got you.
Yeah. You didn't have to do that to me tonight, man.
Yeah. I love how they kept Mira the same, but now Aquaman's got green hair and a green beard.
Mira's got that massive unibrow.
Well, yeah.
That's
true.
I mean, this is the de-evolution of art, of animation, is what I feel a little bit that's happening. And I understand a lot of reasons why it may happen, because of cost involved, the ability to do certain things, the ability of time management and people involved. But I still don't think it's an excuse when there's so much money involved and so much different creative outlets out there. People are being so creative just on their own, who don't work for these different companies, that are creating fabulous animated works of art. It can be simplified. I'm not saying don't be simplified. Don't be something that's kind of eye candy for the young children. Absolutely, let's do that, but let's put some thought behind it a little bit. Let's not make it not look so lazy. It looks lazy and unapologetic and disrespectful to, like, how can you, and that's what's shocking to me, how can you have like James Wan producing and all these amazing people working on that made the Aquaman movie that was very much worried that it was not going to be a good film because Aquaman, and made it good, made it phenomenal. And then you have them transition, like, yeah, why not? Of course they're going to do an animated series. It's going to be great. And at this point, the writing and the story may be phenomenal. But the artwork is going to take you completely out of the situation, completely out of it. You're not going to want to watch it. You've just lost half of the viewership because of it. And I know the argument, it's not made for you. It's made for the kids. I get that, but that argument can only go so far. It can only go so far for so many things. At some point, you have to address the elephant in the room and say, this is just horrible artwork. It's just not good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that it's not made for you, it's made for the kids argument is lame. You know, and I know it's not your argument, obviously, but
no.
It's an argument that's been used a lot, and I think it's a lame argument. I don't think it works anymore. It's the same thing I had the conversation with Sean about video games, playing video games, and how people always look at, like, oh, you're too old for video games. Why am I too old for video games? You know, video games was something that we started. It was our generation, and we lived through video games. Why is it? Where has there been a precedent set that it says that I'm supposed to stop playing video games? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Just because I'm older now, I'm just supposed to stop playing video games. Why these things transition to an older generation, you know, and then the cartoons do the same. So, you know, there's no reasoning for that. I think it's just a lazy way to say don't worry about it, but that's bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense that these things can't do both. It can service both. You know, the
Yeah.
young children and the young adults. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you said, it's just lazy. Yeah, that's all it is. But anyway, you know, I mean, I think that's enough. We don't want to raise Sean's blood pressure too much before the night's over.
No worries.
You know, we don't
Already did.
we don't give him too much. Yeah, we'll save some stuff for another time. But but anyway, yeah, I think that's gonna wrap it up for today, man. I think we covered some good stuff. We'll definitely come back and have more to talk about another time. And for that being said, everybody who stuck around for the whole shebang, thank you very much. Hit the subscribe button, comments down below, get into the conversation. Let's hear what you guys got to say. Come back and check us out. We'll be doing this again, and we'll see you guys soon. All right, guys. Oh, real quick, Graven, if you got anything coming up or anything you want to shout out to anybody?
If you guys like to know more about me, more about what I do as far as my art design stuff, you can check out artofravenwolf.com. I also do conventions as well. As things are slowly opening up, we're still taking it slow based on COVID-19, of course, but we have a few conventions coming up that you can find all about on our social media links if you'd like to take a look at that. Don't put that focus on me. My beautiful wife's got some amazing artwork too, so be sure to take a look at her stuff on our page as well, and keep following Rick over here and my man Sean. They're great people. You'll be blessed to know them.
Yeah, of course you will. Definitely come back, check out Bloody Nerd stuff. Sean is going to be doing more stuff as well with us, and we'll soon be setting him up. Don't keep your eyes open. You'll see Sean do some shit on his own too. All right.
Well, definitely in the business sense, look out for Sean R. Anthony Real Estate. Mm-hmm. Check me out on Instagram, Facebook, and the TikTok page is coming soon. I'm going to start walking through some interesting looking properties soon enough. So
yeah, I'll make sure I get everybody's information, put it in the box down below. If you guys want to hit them up or look at any of their content, I'll put it in the information box below. All right, guys. Thank you guys for sitting in with me.
No problem.
I'll talk to you guys soon. Everybody in the sphere, you sweaties out there, keep sweating. I'll holler at you guys later.
Take care.
Later.
Bye.
All right.